Hello, everyone. This is criminal profiler Pat Brown, and it's been a kind of a surprise today. I wasn't intending to do any show today because yesterday, which I did not do a show, is because I really felt that it was quite a boring day on Tuesday, and nothing new really came out, so I didn't do any discussion of it. And so I thought I'd do that tonight, but then I was surprised that the defense rested their case. So on Wednesday, November the 6th, this is part 13, which is going to be extremely short because there's not much to talk about really today either, except that the defense indeed did rest. And they took half the time presenting their case than the prosecution. And I think it's mostly because they don't have a lot except to say, he's psychotic. He confessed because he lost his mind in prison, and that's really what we're going on. Ignore all the other stuff. That's what we're going on. Now, there was one thing that came out yesterday was this concept of the headphone jack manipulation. So this woman came, Stacey Eldridge, a former FBI forensic examiner, came and she talked about how Libby German's cell phone had this thing that happened where the headphone jack was in and then it was not in, when somebody manipulated it, she said, somebody manipulated it in the wee hours of the morning. And of course, this is a Hail Mary shot at saying somebody else, not him, was at the crime scene. And maybe even those guys who took the girls away and then brought them back and killed them in the middle of the night, in spite of the fact all the searchers were rolling around the area, and it makes zero sense. But hey, see, somebody was there in those wee hours, and that's probably when they killed the girls. So I think that was their attempt for one more piece of, shall we say, physical evidence. It's really indirect evidence, circumstantial evidence, but interesting enough to maybe make the jury go, well, he was home with his wife, right? So who was with the girls at that hour of the morning? And yeah, maybe the Odinist thing is correct, even though we haven't heard about that during the trial, but we all heard about it before the trial. Oh, I shouldn't say that because I told them no, I hadn't. But anyway, so that's the one piece they had yesterday, and then more about all his issues, and so they rested their case on his psychotic descent while he was incarcerated under horrible circumstances. So that's where it is. And now we're going to have closing arguments. I believe that's starting tomorrow. And we'll see what those closing arguments bring. In other words, who can put it all together the best for the jury that is more convincing. And we shall see. We shall see. But I'll say this again on closing. This is all I'm going to say. I still think this case is, and the reason I think that is because the police handling of the case early on was so bad, and the defense has pretty much successfully used his incarceration as a possibility for him confessing to something he didn't do. And the last thing they left yesterday in the minds of the jurors is those videos from the cell making him look like a lunatic, like, say something, well, look at this guy, he's walking around naked, he's doing all kinds of creepy things, strange things. Nobody would do that if they weren't having a mental breakdown. And that's when he started confessing. Don't you see, jury? That's when the confessions came out, and everything else, there's really not enough evidence to say he was bridge guy. He was simply, yes, he was in the park, and he was willing to come forth and come to the police and even say that. So, this guy's trying to be a decent citizen. Then the police didn't handle the case well. They needed a fall guy. They descended on him and threw him in horrible circumstances till he was tortured enough to, I put quotes around there, because it wasn't a pleasant stay, mind you. And I'm not going to comment on how right and wrong the whole experience he had there was, because it's a little unclear how bad it was, but certainly wasn't pleasant. So that's what they're saying. That's when he descended essentially into madness. And therefore, anything he says after that point, you can't believe, because he essentially, it's a false confession. So that's going to be their argument. And I think that it's a good one to get the jury to either be a hung jury or to just say, I've got reasonable doubt, so not guilty. But on the rare chance that they will find him guilty, it's fodder for the Innocence Project and for progressive DAs, because it's such a mess that they can always come back and they'll have a bunch of technicalities they can put in a row that the government did wrong, and bring in all this. They can bring in a bunch of psychologists and scientists to say he clearly did have a mental breakdown and that's why he confessed. And I don't think he will, if he is convicted, will spend a really, really long time in prison. I think he will get out then. So I think this case is a mess, and it's very sad because these two girls clearly were murdered by somebody, and this somebody is the most likely person, based in my opinion on the evidence, but that it's going to be convincing enough for a jury, and that there isn't going to be a whole bunch of people coming out of the woodwork to try to exonerate him and say he's innocent after the fact. Yeah, that's where I think we're at. So that's it for today. If you're new to the channel, please do like and subscribe. And I will be back tomorrow probably to talk about some of the closing arguments and whether which one of the closing arguments I think is the better of the two. So thank you for being here, and I'll see you soon. Bye.